A clandestine cell system is a method for organizing a group of people such that such people can more effectively resist penetration by an opposing organization. In a cell structure, each of the small group of people in the cell know the identities of the people only in their own cell. Thus, any cell member who is apprehended and interrogated will not likely know the identities of the higher-ranking individuals in the organization. The structure of a clandestine cell system can range from a strict hierarchy to an extremely distributed organization, depending on the group's ideology, its operational area, the communications technologies available, and the nature of the mission. Criminal organizations, undercover operations, and unconventional warfare units led by special forces may also use this sort of organizational structure. Covert and clandestine operations are not the same when it comes to tradecraft. The modern NATO definition of a covert operation says the identity of the sponsor is concealed. But in a clandestine operation, the operation itself is concealed from the participants. Put differently, clandestine means hidden, and covert means deniable. That is to say that the sponsor of a covert action is sufficiently removed from it that the sponsor can claim ignorance in the event the plot is discovered. A sleeper cell refers to a cell, or isolated grouping of sleeper agents, that lies dormant until it receives orders or decides to act. In World War II, Operation Jedberg teams parachuted into occupied France to lead unconventional warfare units. They were composed of 2 officers, one American or British, and the other French, the latter preferably from the area into which they landed, and a third member who was a radio operator. Especially through the French member, they would contact trusted individuals in the area of operation and ask them to recruit a team of trusted subordinates. If the mission was sabotage, reconnaissance, or espionage, there was no need to meet in large units. If the team was to carry out direct action, it would be necessary to assemble into larger units for combat. Even then, the hideouts of the leadership were known only to subcell leaders. The legitimacy of the Jedberg team came from its known affiliation with Allied powers, and it was a structure more appropriate for unconventional warfare than for truly clandestine operations. Also known as the Viet Cong, this organization grew from earlier anti-colonial groups fighting the French and from anti-Japanese guerrillas during World War II. Its command, control, and communication techniques derived from the experiences of these earlier insurgent groups. The group had extensive support from North Vietnam, and, indirectly, from the Soviet Union. It had parallel political and military structures, often overlapping. See Viet Cong and PAV and strategy and tactics. The lowest level consisted of 3-person cells who operated quite closely and engaged in the sort of self-criticism common as a bonding method to communist organizations. The modern Provisional Irish Republican Army has a history going back to Irish revolutionary forces. In the early 20th century, it has little external control. Its doctrine and organization have changed over time, as political, technological, and cultural situations have changed in Ireland. Officially, the PIRA was hierarchical, but as British security forces became more effective, it changed to a semi-autonomous model for its operational and for certain of its support cells. Its leadership saw itself as guiding and as building consensus. The lowest level cells, typically of 2 to 5 people, tended to be built from people with existing personal relationships. British counterinsurgents could understand the command structure, but not the workings of the operational cells. The IRA had an extensive network of inactive or sleeper cells, so it could summon new ad hoc organizations for any specific operation. The NLF and PIRA, as well as other movements, have chosen to have parallel political and military organizations. In the case of the NLF, except for some individuals with sanctuary in North Vietnam, people in the political organization could not be overt during the Vietnam War. After the war ended, surviving NLF officials held high office. In the case of the PIRA, its political wing, Sinn Féin, became increasingly overt, and then a full participant in politics. Hamas and Hezbollah also have variants of overt political, social service and covert military wings. The overt political, social covert military split avoided the inflexibility of a completely secret organization. Once an active insurgency began, the secrecy could limit freedom of action. distort information about goals and ideals, and restrict communication within the insurgency. In such a split organization, public issues can be addressed overtly while military actions are kept covert and intelligence functions stay clandestine. Many cell systems rake